This is my family tree. It's a winding tree with branches going just about everywhere. There's my parents, my grandparents, and my long gone family members. At first, it seems plain, nothing really special. Yet when you dig down, there are deep roots, hard knots, and limbs so full of life. So let's start by climbing up my dad's side of the tree. My dad's parents, Louis Alexander Branch and Geraldine Lee Branch, settled in Morganton, North Carolina, where they had my dad, Will Branch.
They were both North Carolina natives. They had grown up in the mountains and foothills of North Carolina. My father he could not read or write. I don't know when he dropped out of school. I don't know that much about him. She was 39 and my father was 49. And then I came along. So I was obviously not planned. I don't think anybody of that age or with her condition would plan to have a child, but
My dad's father died when he was only 1, leaving his mom alone with my dad. Her mind began to slip away to the point where she placed herself in a mental hospital called Butner, and she entrusted my dad, who was 6 at the time, to his grandparents, Alston and Mary Bowles.
My dad died when I was 1. He was actually buried on my first birthday. When she had to be committed when I was almost 6, she committed herself again to the mental institution and went to live with my grandparents.
My dad stayed with his grandparents until he was about 11. Until over the summer he stayed with his aunt Barbara Bowles and his uncle Jim Stroud. He refused to return with his grandparents after staying with them, and so he stayed with his aunt and uncle.
I didn't know it at the time, but they had been talking about me, moving to live with them, and then my grandparents said they just weren't ready. And then one summer, it must have been when I was 11 years old, the summer when I was 11, and I didn't want to go back, and I cried. I ran to the bathroom because I was ashamed that I didn't want to go back, and I was upset that I had to go back, and I cried. And then, my grandparents were upset, and my aunt was upset, and so I think they finally agreed that it was time for me to move in with them.
As the years went by, everything went pretty normally. He was an average, dorky nerd, aka unpopular with most, which has been passed down to his kids, aka me and my brother, who you'll meet later on.
Maybe, and I probably still do, attract maybe sort of outcast type people, because I always felt like that, sort of like Goonies. I have a Goonies shirt that I love. But
he stayed with his aunt and uncle until he went to college, and there he did his own thing, eventually going through a lot of college classes and mishaps and graduating with quite a few degrees actually.
After I graduated community college and then went off to UNC Charlotte, I lived with my aunt and uncle.
About that time, he was introduced to my mom, Kim Poindexter. But before we get to that, let's go down my mom's side of the tree. My mom's side of the family is from a small town called Mount Airy, located in Surry County, North Carolina, where basically all of my extended family lives now.
I was born in Mount Airy, North Carolina, in Northern Hospital of Surry County. It's also Andy Griffith's hometown.
My mom's side of the family is a lot calmer than my dad's side in some ways, but was pretty hectic when she was growing up. Her mom and dad, Glenda and Mike Poindexter, grew up together and married when they were 16 and 17, and had her when they were only 17 and 18.
My parents were both really young when they had me. They were like 17 and 18, they got married, and when they were like 16 and 17.
Her dad, Papa as we call him, was an evangelist and missionary and bush pilot, which means my mom and her family moved around and did a lot when they were growing up.
when I was probably 3 or 4, I guess, Daddy announced his call to preach. And so that kind of changed life a bit. It seemed like we were always in church or always doing something that was related to ministry.
My mom grew up doing that until she went off to college. After she finished up there, she went back home to Surry County where, through her work, she met my dad.
I enjoyed college for the most part, and I enjoyed leaving. I enjoyed being able to go, and I was glad when I was done. So it wasn't necessarily good or bad, it was just,
They were first brought together by my dad's aunt. After a while of waiting, my dad gave her a call, and after a long call, they went on a first date.
And so his aunt was actually my boss lady. And so he had come home because she was his guardian, and so he had a cyst on his leg. He came home to have that looked at because he was still in grad school and was on her insurance. And so she always took, January 3rd was my first day at work, and she always took the new girl out to lunch. And so he happened to be home that day, and so I met him for the very first time. He didn't ask me out though until the end of February.
She seemed very nice, and I didn't catch that she really liked me or anything, but I think my aunt was always trying to fix me up with people that she knew of from work or her work friends' daughters and whatnot. But so this one evidently stuck. But so basically, my aunt had kept saying, "Yeah, she's been asking about you. She's been asking about you. You ought to call her." And then I found out later that she was just being nice, and I didn't really know that. But I called, and I think on our first call, we were on the phone for hours.
After 6 months of dating and being engaged for 2 months, they were married.
It was a very short thing. It was very strange. I can't really explain it. But I just knew that she was the one. It sounds weird, but I really felt like, God was, I don't know, sort of like shining a light inside me, and it felt like, you could not marry her, but this is the one you're supposed to be with. And I took that as a sign and then took the leap.
I just, they always say when you know, you know. I just knew. I can't explain it. I know it just sounds trite to say that, but it's true. I just knew.
After 2 or 3 sweet years of being alone, they had my older brother, Alex.
I remember his ghost whiteness when I told him I was pregnant with your brother, with Alex. That still stands out in my memory.
After a short time of getting used to just one little kid screaming around the house, they were surprised with another, that one being me. I was born exactly 13 months apart from my brother, so to say it was difficult for them at first is an understatement, but they made it, so far.
If she needed me to change a diaper, I was there. If she needed me to feed one of you, I was there. I could not be woken up in the middle of the night, so I took the usually it was 9 p.m. and 11 or 12 o'clock feeding right before I would go to bed. And then your mother had to deal with whatever happened between then and in the morning. And I may have helped a few times, but it wasn't that many. It was hard on your mother. It was really hard on your mother the first few years. But then after that, it was great. You guys had each other. I don't know, it was just always a blessing.
So there you have it. This is my crazy little family. It's not really anything big or too crazy, but it's our little happy family.